Welcome to a brand new episode of As the World Churns. I'm Andy Levy here, as always, with my utterly delightful co-host, Danielle Moodie. Danielle, Chief Justice Roberts had some strong words
Mm.
following the end of this most recent Supreme Court term. They weren't words that had anything to do with any of the decisions that the court handed down. Instead, they were basically words telling people not to be mean to him, Danielle. He wants you. He didn't say you specifically, but I
But
did feel like it was implied. I mean,
hmm
that's how I took it, that you and people like you
mm.
should stop being mean to him and mean to judges. It's absolutely wild that he will sit there. And yes, he talked about how threats against judges are not good. Agreed. He made it sound like the threats against the judges were coming from the people who disagreed with him. I haven't really seen any actual threats against judges or justices coming from the left or from liberals. I've seen a lot of them coming from the right.
Mm.
I don't get the sense that that was what he was talking about. What say you, Danielle Moodie?
Maybe you wouldn't have to worry about your back so much if you weren't deciding to use your court to shred the Constitution to threaten people's lives and put them in danger. Maybe you wouldn't have to worry about yourself so much if you were actually working on behalf of the American people and trying to, expand rights and justice as opposed to taking them away. So my feeling about his fear is I don't give a fuck. I'm more concerned about his court now allowing those without due process to be sent to third-party nations, war-torn nations like the South Sudan, like El Salvador, without due process. And he gave Donald Trump's regime the absolute green light. He also gave them the green light to begin, I don't know, creating a birth citizen caste system in the United States, which we tried to do away with. And I think, as my guest later in the show will discuss, thought that we'd handled that after, the Civil War. But evidently, this court wants to bring us back to that place. So here's the thing. You don't have to worry when you actually do the right things. And maybe he should direct his concern to his party, which, just radicalize Vance Butler, who actually did carry out an assassination. The Trump voter who just mysteriously has disappeared
Yeah.
from mainstream corporate news. And I wonder if his complexion has anything to do with that, because I'm
Hmm.
pretty sure if he were not white or not a citizen, that everyone in America would still be hearing his name more than they hear their own.
I do want to talk about some of this rhetoric that the Chief Justice speaks of. And I want to read this quote and I wonder if this is what he had in mind about dangerous rhetoric. The quote is, "No right is safe in the new legal regime the court creates." That's a pretty strong statement. And I feel like whoever said, oh, wait, that was Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor. Um, and, she's absolutely right. And she's talking, of course, about the very, very weird birthright citizenship ruling that the court gave that basically said relief is only given to the people in that area, not the whole country, which sets up a whole thing where you could have, I guess, birthright citizenship challenges succeed in one state and fail in another. And I thought the whole point of having a Supreme Court was to say what the law and what the Constitution meant for
For
the
the
entire
country?
nation.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But apparently I was wrong. And as you said, Danielle, about the idea that you thought we had settled this birthright citizenship issue already. Once again, I thought we had settled it too. And I also thought we had settled that when the Supreme Court rules, it applies to the country and not just to a smaller jurisdiction. And that is why Sotomayor is exactly correct in saying that this insane ruling is just opening up an unbelievable can of worms to things that conservatives don't want. As she said, tomorrow a different administration may try to seize firearms from law-abiding citizens. or prevent people of certain faiths from gathering to worship. And the Supreme Court apparently is going to say, well, if we say you can't do that, we mean only in that state, not in other states. Although I suspect, Danielle, that when the rulings are more conservative, the justices will want to apply them to the whole country.
Yes, yes, of course, because that's how it works. It's only states' rights when it's a red state. Otherwise, blue
Yeah.
states don't actually have the same authority over their states. Look,
Yeah.
I will say that the Supreme Court is helping to accelerate America's decline. We already know that this country and the damage that this regime has done and this court has done will take generations to undo if, in fact, we get the opportunity to do that. But it's a good thing, Andy, I want to say this, that Democrats are focused, laser sharp on what the courts are doing and what this regime. Oh, wait, that's right. No, they're not. They're
Yeah,
actually
I
spent
would,
the
yeah.
entire weekend on cable news tearing down Zoran Mondani and using the same Islamophobic smears that the right is known for. Now Democrats are doing it as well. So that's where we are.
It's unreal. We get told all the time, people on the left, vote blue no matter who.
Yep.
I mean, it is a big refrain. There are people to this day yelling at leftists because they imagine first of all, they imagine that none of them voted for Kamala Harris. And they keep yelling at them saying, if you had voted for Kamala Harris, Trump wouldn't be president, none of which is true. Because I mean, most lefties did, whether they held their nose or not, did vote for Kamala Harris. Some didn't, don't get me wrong. But we were told that it was unconscionable for them
Mm-hmm.
to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And now we are sitting here, and not only did we have a bunch of elected officials endorse Andrew Cuomo in the primary,
Uh-huh.
which he then lost, and lost by a decently wide margin.
Double digits.
Yeah, we now have a bunch of Democratic electeds refusing to endorse Mamdani, and that includes Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic House Minority Leader, who is a New York City congressman. Kathy Hochul, our not so esteemed governor. Chuck Schumer has not endorsed Mamdani. And then you have, and I'm still in a little bit of shock over this. You have Democratic Senator from New York, Kirsten Gillibrand, and she went on I think it was a radio show. Yeah, it was the Brian Lehrer show on WNYC here in New York City. And she basically accused Mamdani of favoring global jihad. It was rhetoric that we talked about this on our last episode. It's rhetoric that we've gotten, unfortunately, used to from the right. But we are now hearing it from Democrats, Danielle.
And I want to shout out Mehdi Hassan, who has called for her to resign over her Islamophobia and absolutely just anti-Islam, just disgusting rhetoric. And, and here's the thing. People have said for too long that they don't see much daylight between Democrats and Republicans. And I have to tell you that when it comes to suckling off of the tit of the billionaire oligarchs, there is no daylight in between the two of them. And that's why they hate Zoran Mondani, because they don't actually want to be beholden to the people, to the working class. And that's why they're trying to smear and run his name into the ground. And I'll say this before we change topics, which is that I just saw some exit polling on the demographic that came out the strongest in the primary. 18 to 24-year-olds.
Yep.
Toppled above everyone else. So what do you think establishment Democrats are doing right now? What do you think Republicans are doing right now? Radicalizing an entire generation to want and demand better than what their parents and grandparents were given.
And by the way, an entire generation that the Democrats are spending millions, tens of millions of dollars trying to reach, supposedly. We hear every day we have to reach out to young people, particularly to young men. We need a Joe Rogan of the left. We're spending $20 million on this project to see what young people want to hear about. Here you have a guy, Zoran Mamdani, who is telling you exactly what you want to know. You don't have to spend a dime to find it out. And also, like, I mean, it is unheard of for 18 to 24s to be
In a
the driver of
primary.
an election in a primary. That's unheard of. And look, I will say straight up, I thought Cuomo was going to win because I have been spending too much time listening to my mom and her friends, the elderly voters. And I remember saying to someone before the election, I said, if young people don't turn out huge for this election, we are screwed and it's going to be Cuomo. And I, because of the past, I just assumed you can't really get 18 to 24s or 18 to 30s or whatever to turn out in an election. And boy, did they. And it's fantastic. And it is just unbelievable that there is a clear signal here what the future of the Democratic Party is, and the tone deaf response from Gillibrand, who I agree should resign. I mean, what she said was beyond the pale. And she should resign. But Jeffries, Schumer, Dan Goldman, all these people, with a few exceptions, Jerry Nadler has endorsed Mamdani. Chris Van Hollen has said good things about Mamdani. But boy, the rest of the Democratic leadership, y'all don't know what's coming for you, I don't think.
No, you don't.